Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, June 28th, 2024, and this is episode 922 of Living Free in Tennessee. And it's a Friday, and I'm in the Holler Homestead, so we're doing a two-person Homestead Happenings update. We're going to talk about an updated schedule we have for the Holler Homestead. We're going to talk about the hottest week of the year. We're going to give you an update on the garden, the livestock, all of the things that happen here. Plus, if you have questions about homesteading or how we organize things as holler neighbors, those sorts of things, you can put them in just in the live comment section. Put the word question in all caps, followed by your question. And I will do my best to work it into the show. And of course, Tactical will be joining me today, but as usual, he's running late. He is currently a minute late. And I hear him thumping around making coffee. So that probably means that he'll get here now. Tactical, why in the world were you late after we've redone our whole schedule?
Because the ducks wanted out.
Because the
And
ducks
I
wanted
forgot.
out and you forgot. Okay, perfect. Anyway, before we jump into all that, though, I want to talk about our featured event of today's show, and that is the Freedom Trinity free webinar at Live Free Academy. I have a link in the show notes. And I think I can paste it here in the comments too. Let me see. Nope. Anyway, basically, John Bush over at Live Free Academy has put together a free webinar to help you start thinking about ways that you can structure your communities or your life to opt out of some of the regulatory environment that exists today. And it's through doing things like having a private membership organization or private ministry association, those sorts of things. And he's put it all together in a webinar. It's going on right now. So if you want to go to the webinar, right after this video is done, I will have it in the description of the video on YouTube, but also in the show notes of the audio podcast is a link that gets you straight there. I went to the link today and clicked on, sign up. And what it does is takes you straight into the webinar that is in progress right now. So for what that's worth, you can get that for the next day or two. I think it's going on for free. And then, of course, they have an upgrade that you can buy if you want to learn even more about the process. So that's over at Live Free Academy. It's livefree.academy. I also want to thank our two sponsors of the day's show. The first one is Discount Mylar Bags. Why do we love them?
Because that's where you get your coffee bags from.
Also, yeah, it's where I get my coffee bags from. Also, Tigger has joined the live stream.
Yes.
And it's a business that's run by a friend of mine who transitioned from working a job to running this as a full-time thing. And his secret superpower is sourcing things in bulk and then passing on those savings to you. So you can find out more at discountmylarbags.com. If you are a member, you get a discount at Discount Mylar Bags. So be sure to do that as well. Our second sponsor is the Kangen Water Collective. Are you sold on Kangen water yet? He's not sure yet. I'm like, I keep asking him, like, have you transitioned to all Kangen water? Have you?
No.
Nope. Anyway, I've been really enjoying using the Kangen water machine, not just for hydration, which is supposed to help you hydrate better. And has it been hot?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we need to give this a test. We're going to turn the oven back on next week, it looks like. So we need to get you all Kangened up for that. Anyway, KangenWaterCollective.com has a lot more information about, it's called structured water or alkaline water. It does not use chemicals to change the pH of water. It uses electrolysis, which is different than some of the products you get on the shelves. If you want to find out more about Kangen water, go to KangenWaterCollective.com. That's the group with Louise Milliman that I'm in. And if you decide you want to, find out more about buying one or integrating it into your life, reach out to me, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, it's time to move on to show content. Again, guys, if you have questions, put them in the comments. I see that we've got A-Ray Pierre, AJ, Pack Rat, Rural 2IC. I haven't seen you on a live stream in a while, Rural. And then Martinson family and Rachel. Do not incite the wrath of Rachel by not liking this show. That's right. She will be up your nose about this if you don't do it. So you might as well just get that like out of the way right now. Okay. How do you like the new homestead schedule?
It's working so far.
Yeah. So I realized when I was on my way back from California that we needed to change what time of day we were doing things on the homestead to tap into the reality of when the sun comes up, when it sets, when it gets hot. Do you like doing stuff outside when it's hot?
I prefer the heat over the cold, but the last like a week ago was just brutal.
And then balancing what happens to homesteaders at this time of year, because we have so much sun, is you feel like I'm going to go outside and I'm going to get some work done. And next thing you know, it's like 14 hours have gone by and you haven't eaten anything and you're tired and you feel like this immense pressure while there's daylight to get stuff done and you forget to take care of yourself. And then if you're tactical, you really forget to take care of yourself if there's not somebody around reminding you that breakfast is ready, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I looked at that and I'm like, okay, we've got some intense, like the next 2 to 3 months are going to be really intense here with my schedule because I'm commuting to California. That means I'm gone days at a time. He's left to his own devices days at a time. So I sat on the airplane on the way home and thought, okay, what can we do to optimize like when I'm in town getting stuff done, like I get stuff done, not be outside between the hours of like 11:30, 12 and about 3 p.m., which is the hottest time of the day. Eat nutritional food that we're growing, which can be hard to work in when you're feeling pressure to do things like muck out coops or whatnot. And then you're tired and you don't want to cook. That's me. And also build in time to take care of myself, him to take care of himself, like from getting exercise or etc. Like things like that.
I have no problems with the exercise thing.
You need to start taking Pilates with me. It will make your back feel better.
Okay.
And that's, think of it like stretching.
Okay.
It would actually probably make you feel better when you're doing other things on the homestead.
Okay.
You're not sold.
No.
Yeah. So he feels like he's getting enough exercise. I feel like some more structured exercise helps your body function better in the exercise scenario. And I see how you lift things. You're capable of lifting really heavy things, but I think it hurts your back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so, stuff like that. And maybe his self-care thing is sit out at the pond and look for a turtle in the morning instead of go for a walk with Nicole, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're on like a 7-second delay.
My brain is in 1,000 places.
Okay. Well, focus. Come on, focus. So what I did is I set it up to where I do best if I get up and walk the dog. So that happens for me. And then there's coffee at a specific time. During coffee at a specific time, he and I can sort of align on what's happening for the day. And then I go do an outside project just about every day to move forward on like gardening or managing the food forest or the tomato wall, which is looking great right now. Those sorts of things. Because I know that once it gets super hot, I don't want to be outside. I actually don't just balls through that. I have a tendency to be like, yep, super hot. I'm going to come inside and do an inside thing. He's less likely to do that. He'll keep ballsing through. And then he comes in and he looks like death. And he says, it's hot. That's what you do.
Yeah. I would still prefer to be outside than inside. I'll just, like when it got really bad the other day, I would go sit down by the creek.
Okay, fair. At least you're cooling off then. So we redesigned the whole schedule, and after day one, it was awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things we're doing is eating dinner at 5:30, which means that then we have time for an evening activity when it's also cooler outside or whatever. And I find that not going to bed with my stomach out to here with dinner is helpful because what was happening is we were eating dinner after sunset, which is like 8:30 or 8. So as a result of that, like, do you think productivity went up this week?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. I know it did. I know I got more done than I usually get done because the other thing is if I haven't been outside on the regular, because I've been doing computer work. Then at 4 o'clock, I'm like, do I really want to go out there? You know, like there's a motivational thing that happens when you expose yourself like to the outside, where you're like, okay, I'm getting energy from the outside. So yeah. Rachel says, does anybody else love it when Tactical hijacked the live stream? Yeah, he does that from time to time. So I would say that this schedule will not endure forever. And it is pretty stringent right now. And it works really well. I'm just doing the homestead at this time of year. It doesn't like reduce the amount of work we have to do, but it does. What it does that I think works well is like there's a time segment for this, and then when it's done, the time is done, it's done, and you stop in the middle and go on to something else. Now, obviously, there are projects on the homestead you have to just get done, and you can't stop in the middle of them. Like if he's going to move the sheep, he can't be like, well, 5 more minutes till the fencing was going to be done. I'm out. I mean, if the sheep have to move, they have to move. But things like maintaining the garden or catching up on the swales or bucking up wood from the trees being taken down, like all of those things, you can say like, I'm going to do this for 45 minutes and then I'm going to go remember to do the next like important benchmark I have to do. And having meal prep for me, I do meal prep, which is separate from him at 3 p.m. most days. That means I know like everything's cut up and ready to cook is what I'm doing. And that's actually resulted in a better nutritional makeup of what we ate this week, even though it was a really busy week. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a confession to make about yesterday?
Yesterday was always going to be a train wreck regardless. Okay.
It doesn't help with days where you are overscheduled and there are people coming and things happen no matter what. So the schedule works great. And then there are days like yesterday where I did manage to get like everything in the morning done up into breakfast. And then it went completely off the rails and some things happened that had to be taken care of. So I went and took care of them because I had 2 choices. One, ignore the things that have to be taken care of and stay on the schedule because it's important. Or look at the schedule and be like, I am fitting in my Pilates. I am making sure we have a dinner. And those are my 2 things. And his 2 things were make sure all the animals were put away when they needed to be put away. And I don't know what your other 2 thing was. Yeah. Anyway, we had a talk. Like when it was clear it was going off the rails, I was like, okay, what's really happening for the rest of the day? And I got kind of wrecked by a drive that I had to take suddenly. And I got to about, gosh, was it 5:30 or 6? It was 5:30. And I'm talking to him and I'm like, if we're going to have dinner anywhere close to on time, we have to go get Mexican food at the marina. So I'm sitting there like, do we go get Mexican food at the marina? Or do I do the meal prep and we just eat late? And finally, he's like, do whatever you want to do. I'm going to go do my last thing. So he left. And I decided I would just soldier through, cook late, eat late like we used to do. And that was going to be that. And that's what happened. And as a result, we had a pretty good dinner last night, but it was at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was super late. So schedule's working great, but it's not an end all be all. And we'll see how next week goes. I also know that maintaining the rigidness of the schedule as it is right now is hard. But I'm pushing through the hard days because I have a feeling that once I push through some of those hard days, it'll be better.
Yeah. And I mean, to start with, this is kind of, everybody knew this was coming because you hit that point when we used to try to do dinner, it was at 6 o'clock every night. It's like, yeah, that's not going to fly because there are some days where sunset is at 7, which means I'm starting animals at 6. So, yeah, I'm not going to be in the kitchen eating food at 6 o'clock. But then you hit points of the year like right now where it's like, you know, the sun doesn't set until 8. You got light till 8:30. Like if I'm not careful, it'll be 8:45 and I'll still have a shovel in my hand or something. Like,
yeah, and there are times when you just need to do that. But if you do that every day, then you stop prioritizing your body's health, and that's not why we're on a homestead.
yeah.
So anyway, that's the new schedule. And related news, the Joel Salatin webinar this week went really well. And it will be available as a recording for sale by Monday. And because I'm processing the video right now. But he talks about time management on the homestead in a way that's a little different than how our schedule is, but was helpful to me to think about. And you need to watch it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we're going to pull some things from that a lot too. And there are some big arguments you and I get to have soon.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and we'll have them with you guys watching probably. So that was really cool. I everybody who showed up and was able to get their questions answered, I think that was helpful for them as well. We kept head count pretty low on that so that people got better direct feedback from Joel Salatin. And he's been running Polyphase for a long time. So yeah, A. Ray Pierce says, I find that in summer I eat a lot more sandwiches for dinner. Yeah, it is fast. And if I prep at 3 and I cook at 5, the food's usually done by 5:30. We're back out the door by 6, although sometimes what I'm cooking takes longer, but mostly I'm able to get it. The only thing that was a little weird this week was timing the duck. Because it was like it might take 45 minutes or it might take 2 hours. So I started it really early, then forgot it existed. And then it was cooked a little more than I wanted it cooked, but it still tasted really good.
Yeah.
And that one, if I had an oven in my house, would have been fine, but I don't currently have a working oven in my house. So, and once it's in somebody else's oven, unless I set an alarm, which I did not do, which I should have done, I'm gonna forget it's there because it's not like, oh yeah, check the oven as part of the rotation of what I'm doing. So yeah. Sagane's girl says, I've eaten carnivore ice cream for dinner 2 days in a row. Yeah, we also have the cauliflower crust pizza ripcord that we could pull. That almost happened yesterday.
Is that like frozen summer sausage?
Yeah, frozen summer sausage. I don't know. I've never had carnivore ice cream because if I'm gonna have ice cream, I just have ice cream. That's my approach. Okay, next segment is Featured Forage, where we talk about what we're finding out and about. You found something cool this week.
Twice, I think.
Yeah, one was usable, though.
Yeah.
What was it?
Oysters.
Oyster mushrooms. Yeah, and I saw a fresh bloom of oysters yesterday when I was driving, which means if we go look at all the oyster places, we may find more because we got that rain yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, or day before yesterday. Yeah, so we had fresh oyster mushrooms in our saute one of the nights. Kiri says bacon counts as a meal, right? Absolutely.
Yes.
I actually, that's one of my road meals. It's like cook bacon, put it. That's a good airplane meal. People look at you funny on the airplane though when you're eating this like haystack of bacon, but I don't care.
People usually look at me funny anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And then the mint is explosive right now and needs to be harvested. I've got a lot of chocolate mint to harvest for tea, but also the creek mint is where the watercress used to be, and then the ducks killed it all. There is as much mint there as there was watercress this time last year. Yeah. So I want to harvest that to make room for watercress to come back and then keep the ducks out of there.
Yeah, I'm transplanting some of that mint too.
Yeah, it's everywhere. We call it creek mint, but it's probably water mint, just like the water mint that's in my aquaponics system.
Probably.
Yeah, it's probably the plant it is, but it's delicious. It's delicious as teas, and my favorite tea flavor is absolutely mint. Yeah. I really like it. Like I mix it with other things, but whenever I'm like, wow, I need this herbal remedy and it tastes like grass, then I add some mint and it tastes good and then it's better. So there is that. The pawpaws this year are the most loaded down with fruit I have ever seen them. Have you noticed that?
No, because I haven't been where pawpaws are.
Okay. If we owned the land across the street, you'd totally be where pawpaws were all the time.
I know that.
Yeah. Anyway, I wish we owned that. And I don't know what that means. Like sometimes I find that there is a correlation between how different wild plants do and what weather does for the year. So with that many pawpaw, it'll be interesting to check out what we have for the winter or the
Yeah.
fall. Or even the summer. Like, do we go into a drought?
I'm really hoping not.
Yeah, we all hope not. We've had a very wet year so far this year.
Yeah, that's the scary part for me is like, did we just get all of our allotted rain for the year in like a month?
Yeah, don't know. And it has been known to happen that from here on out, it's just no rain. But we've been having about once a week rainstorms, and that's good. I have still ended up augmenting with water in the garden. So
Yeah.
that's a thing. That's just because it got to 140,000 degrees while I was out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hot. I'm really glad we got the shade cloth up before I left up there. I'm just saying. Okay, mullein is blooming everywhere, so it's going to be time to harvest mullein flower this weekend, next week.
Where were we just at where I was like, coming back from Nashville was like the biggest mullein patch I've ever seen, and all of it had seed heads. And I was like, I could spend 10 minutes walking through there and bring several armloads of seed heads out.
Yep. The Roar tribe is asking if we have wild raspberries. We had wild raspberries, and I was just sort of eating hands full of them on my walk before I went to California. So that was about 2 weeks ago. When I came back, they were gone, but the blackberries are starting to come on. So I like the wild raspberries better. And I didn't pick any to store this time because I still have some from last year in the freezer, but they're delicious. They're actually better than the blackberries in Tennessee for sure. And I think because it got so hot last week that they just said, never mind. That's what I think happened.
Yeah.
Because it got really hot and it stayed hot. So
I swear for raspberries when I'm on the lawnmower.
he doesn't like raspberries. I have to actually leave property now to harvest them, even though I was cultivating them here because somebody has whacked them all off.
It's not surprising.
Do you know who it is? I know who it is. Anyway, so yeah, lamb's quarter is up and at about the ideal size for harvesting and sauteing with your weekly saute. And that's about all I saw there. I mean, there's other things. There's dandelion flower, there's red clover flower, there's like stuff like that that's always it's sort of a perennial thing through the summer. And actually the bee balm is blooming right now, and it got nailed by the garden hose. So like I only have 3 flowers out there left. And I'm just letting it do its thing. I may transplant 1 or 2 into our food forest, but right now the food forest is not ready for that transplant because it will take over the whole forest. And I'm wanting to move things there like mint and other stuff that will serve as sort of the ground cover, like the strawberries and that sort of thing. Mississippi Homestead says wild blackberries are done here. That's interesting. I've seen them here. I actually haven't picked any blackberries because I find Tennessee blackberries to be singularly disappointing because I grew up in Oregon where blackberries are like really good. Like if you tasted Oregon blackberries in Oregon ripe, and then you'll understand why everybody likes them so much.
Okay. So that's the difference between liking and not liking. I'm not eating the blackberries. I'm getting stabbed by them constantly. So that's why, yes, when I see them, they get run over with a lawnmower or hit repeatedly with a weed eater.
So the balance we have to find is that she really likes the black raspberries.
Okay. Go find them somewhere not in my sheep pasture.
Right. Well, I haven't been harvesting them in your sheep pasture. I want them on this property somewhere. But we need to talk about where that would make sense because getting them started ain't hard.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, the wineberries need to go somewhere too. Wineberries are probably ripe right now, and they're behind the shed, and there's so many weeds around them I can't get to them. And the reason they're behind the shed is we basically put a shed on top of them, and they've grown out from under.
Yeah.
So
they didn't die.
They didn't die. No, they're hard to kill. So I'd like to find a fence, something where they could be controlled, or like, we'll talk about that. That's something that is just going to happen when it happens. It's not a huge priority for me right now. So green beans are a much bigger priority for me right now. Okay, next segment is livestock. This is where we talk about the critters. And since I've gotten home and can help with the homestead right now, I have, as part of my morning outside project time, been harvesting fodder trees and bringing it to the goats. And he didn't really know I was doing that. Did you?
I've seen you carrying some of it.
Yeah. And the goats are loving it. I didn't do it this morning, so they're pretty sad because I didn't get my outside time this morning yet. But that's working well. And that's also helping to maintain the fodder tree system because I have a pollard system set up, which means I'm cutting it sort of up near eye level and then harvesting from up there so we can graze under it and the sheep won't get up in there. That's kind of why we made that decision, because of the space constraints here. And the goats are loving it. I've also been harvesting greens for the rabbits every day. And mulberry, different M word. So mulberry is something that's actually really well balanced for rabbits. Okay. And this is what's always going on in my head, guys. So I gave it to the rabbits. And did they eat it? They kind of nibbled at it. They weren't super stoked about it. But what they really like is plantain. So I've been throwing plantain and a little bit of mulberry in there to try to get them more oriented towards the mulberry. It may be more of a thing where I dry the leaves and pelletize it, actually, if we have access to a pelletizer, because I'm not buying one.
Yeah, those are expensive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not bad if you're going to make pelletized food as a thing. But that's where having a homestead community can be really helpful, because somebody who is doing pelletized feed isn't going to be using it all the time. And if you're friends, you can come over with your stuff and do the thing with the stuff. Yeah. So that's something I'm interested in pursuing. I have a lot of mulberry leaves right now, and they're a really good protein source for bunnies. Okay. So that I've been doing that. Speaking of bunnies, what's your critique of your rabbit tractor?
It turned out a little bit heavier than I would like, and I just don't see it working very well on this property, just because I don't cut the grass that short and we don't have that much grass right now to start with. So, I mean, if nothing else, we're getting compost deposited throughout the yard.
Yeah, so what it's working well for is the rabbit poop does not have to be cleaned up in the rabbit tractor. They are getting a little bit, but the squares are too small for the plantain leaf to poke up, and I have a lot of plantain that grows here. And I think for the rabbit tractor to work, it has to have bigger squares. And the squares on the bottom are to keep the rabbits from digging out of the cage. So
also so that it's comfortable for them to stand on.
So in order for the rabbit tractor to work, I would turn those cages upside down where there's bigger squares and design it so it isn't hanging over the ground, but direct contact with the ground, which then means you need to move it more often. That's what I would do if anybody's interested in looking at the design. I'm actually interested in kind of trying that, but I know we don't have spare time for experiments at this moment. But I think then they could get to the plantain and eat what they want, but then you're going to be moved every day, maybe once or twice a day. And I think you're moving it every 2 days right now.
I'm moving it right now when I remember to move
it. So I walk by and I cut food near them and give it to them. And it is, like, from a cleaning standpoint, great, because the other rabbit tower at this point has to have the poop removed every few days because they're like in a stack with trays, and that's fine. I actually have a bunch of rabbit manure I get to put on my garden today, but when I'm out of town, I don't think anybody's emptying the poop. So luckily, I can be away for 5 days and it's not a problem.
Yeah, I didn't empty it because I didn't need to get empty.
Yeah, well, they're happier if you empty it more, and then you don't have flies laying eggs in the poop and then hatching and making more flies. So Rachel says her rabbits are loving the burdock. Yeah, they like burdock. They like comfrey too, although like the mulberry, when I gave it to them, they weren't as enthusiastic, but we actually need to feed some of that to the sheep too. I just keep forgetting to send you off with some. But in general, I'm focusing on things that he doesn't have time to focus on. And one of those things is tapping into the things that are growing here to feed the livestock. because where he's at is keeping everybody in, keeping them watered, and using external feed if he needs to. It's not part of his habit right now to harvest from the yard and feed to the animals. Um, and that's fine. I think that may change over time as systems become more efficient, but it's something I can bring to the table pretty easily when I'm here and he's here, where I'm just like, hey, on your way over, take this to the sheep. And he'll be like, okay. And then takes it to the sheep and he can tell me if they love it or not. The reason I haven't like set that up right is he's been going to the sheep when I've been in the middle of something, and I don't want to like harvest comfrey in the morning and have him give it to him in the evening because it'll be all wilty and less appetizing. So we might get that one done today. We might not because you might be going to pick up a wood chipper.
Yeah.
I don't know when that's happening, but
they're also due to move tomorrow too. So there's that whole evolution that's going to need to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. So little sheep had some scabs on her ears and we weren't quite sure what it was. And it was, it's called rain something. I can't remember the word right now, but it's basically, it had rained a lot and rain scab, and she had scabs on her ears. That's the name. And it could have also been a rain scald. And then also the sun had suddenly come out. And so the other thing that can be is sensitivity to the sun. So he got a lanolin based lotion. And how fast did that work to get rid of it?
I only put it on once, and I think you put it on like 2 days later.
Yeah, in 2 days it was gone after he put it on once. So that was pretty cool. We have some other sheep with it who are hard to catch, and that brings back up that we need to build a way to drive the sheep into a chute so we can get them and work on them. They are becoming more handleable as we give them sheep treats, so that's helpful. Like I can get all the girls now except for Cloudy and one of the twins. Khaki, I think it is.
Khaki's not one of the twins. Bonnie's probably.
No, it's Khaki who's the mom, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Khaki's hard to get your hands on. But she's getting a little bit better. And then the rams are still really hesitant to eat out of my hand. So I've gotten to the point where some of them will smell it.
Yeah, same.
But they won't actually eat. And we just keep trying. And the problem is to go out there with sheep treats. The ladies who are willing to be handled by us are very motivated by sheep treats. And if, like I can only hold my hand out so long to a little baby ram before they're like butting their head in because they're like, well, if you're not going to eat it, I'm going to eat it right now because that stuff is delicious.
Yeah.
So I would like to spend more time in the pasture than I have been. And we'll see if I get another day or two where I can actually go over there and maybe read a book for half an hour. I just have not had, like, there is so much to do in between going to California and not that I just haven't allowed myself that because I'm using my leisure time for working out. So that's that. Any like related showers and changing clothes and all the things that you do.
That's also going to get easier as they're coming back down the hill too.
Yeah, they're coming closer, and we are at a point where the rams are needing to move, but we have to have things ready here for that, and it's not ready. The other morning on my walk, I sent Tactical a picture of a turtle that was this big and asked him if it was a snapping turtle, and he didn't know. And I said, well, it's down by the pond. And then later that day, Nighthawk was over here helping me troubleshoot what's wrong with my oven. And Tactical queued up and said, I need you to go to this specific place, pick up my 22 and bring it down to the pond now. And Nighthawk went into straight like GSD mode. And I'm like, I bet it's a turtle. And he's like, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to go do what he says. So I go down, like he comes back. I'm like, was it a turtle? He's like, yeah. I'm like, did it look like this turtle? Do you know you could have shot that turtle at 6:30 in the morning? If you would have just gone down there.
The problem was when I looked at the picture, it was like, I don't see the telltale signs that it's a snapping turtle. And it just from the angle of the picture, I was like, that kind of looks like the head's pulled back. It's probably a boxer. And so I just blew it off. It wasn't until I actually zoomed in on the picture and got a look at the tail and was like, oh yeah, that's a snapper.
Yeah. So it was a snapping turtle. The problem with snapping turtles in our pond is they eat ducks. And so they're not allowed in our pond. They also put holes in the pond. So for the last few mornings when I go on my walk, there's a redneck squatting at the top on a rock at the top of the pond. And I assume it's not just to get his morning meditation in. I assume he's hoping the snapping turtle will pop back up. So yeah, that's the story. Okay, next up we have holler neighbors and community. Guys in the live stream, if you want to hear something about the homestead, just put it in the comments and we'll do our best to work it in. Okay. Tell us about the vehicle circus. Okay, go ahead.
It continues to go around.
Yeah, we've had a lot of everybody using everybody else's cars for things because cars have been hit and broken. And while I was in California, we had the hottest week of the year. How was that?
It was hot.
It was hot. And then the sprinkler in the garden wasn't doing very well. So I came back and like near the sprinkler immediately was doing okay. And then out at the edges, I had bone dry soil and really sad squash plants. So we fixed that though.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, I haven't actually talked about the garden segment yet either. I skipped a segment.
Oh.
Whoops. Anyway, so I had been without a car for a while. That got fixed. And then we've done a little bit of trading cards around as different ones are going into the mechanic for maintenance. And then apparently while I was gone and it was the hottest week of the year, Nighthawk's clutch went.
Something went.
Yeah, and he works every day, so he has to commute to work. So apparently he was driving the truck I've been driving that I call my truck, even though it's not 100% my truck. And we agree that I can call it that until I'm driving something else that's my thing. And so now it's been like, which car does he get to drive? Because it's taken like, I don't know, 2 weeks now. Almost 2. It's going to be ready maybe Monday. Allegedly. So yeah, it's really nice to have neighbors nearby for situations like this so that you can borrow each other's automobiles. Also, Tactical just wandered off because my dog is making noises like she has to pee. So, and then tonight we have holler dinner because of my need to commute to California. Some holler neighbors were like, hey, how can we help? And I was like, well, let's just have a dinner and we'll talk about whatever. And if something comes up, something comes up. The biggest issue with how can I help is I don't have a good answer for it.
Yeah, that was the noise of come let me out or clean up whatever I'm about to deposit on the floor.
Oh, is she vomitous?
I don't know what it was, but she was definitely in a hurry to go outside.
Yeah. Rural 2IC says, I had car troubles too. A groundhog decided my wires were yummy. Yeah, my philosophy on cars out here is that you need one more car than people who need to drive. So we have 2 cars between 2 people right now. We need a third car here so that if one's down and 2 people need to go 2 directions, we can just rotate.
So the wiring thing, I never understood until I ended up in a conversation with one of the facilities guys who worked on the fiber lines. And apparently they use vegetable oil as one of the ingredients for the insulation on the wires.
Yum, yum.
So I've seen a variety of animals take.
Hey, I had a mouse in the house. And I had this vanilla scented soap in the bathtub. And I woke up. This is how I knew I had a mouse in the house. And there was it had been eating the soap.
Yeah.
That's it's funny. It's like just apparently the scent of, and it didn't just take a bite and move on. No, it had been literally eating the soap.
No.
I bet it had the diarrhea later that day. Maybe. I don't know. I did catch that mouse. It is no longer in my life. How many trucks are in the holler, Tactical?
I don't know.
He's thinking. I'm holding the number.
Okay, I'm counting.
Yeah. Your Jeep does not count as a truck.
Whatever it drives.
It's a car. How many trucks? He doesn't like it when I call a Jeep a car. The answer is 6. How many of them currently work? 1. That statistic has not improved for a whole month.
Okay.
We're trying either to make this number go down or this number go up. That's the goal.
Okay. You're trying to do that. I have 2 operational vehicles, so I'm not concerned about that number right now.
I am, because they're in the way of us getting stuff done. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how the Holler neighbors and community are doing. Next segment is grow. This is what we're growing on the homestead. Tell me about your peppers.
So I had 2 spots where I had peppers. One was a bunch of old containers that I used to use. I got rid of most of those, but I kept, I think, 5. And I've got some peppers in those. And then I've got a little area I call the rock garden, which was doing Star Spangled Awesome. And then it got dry. And then we dropped a chestnut tree on top of that. And so last I looked, everything over there just looked like it was ready to die.
Yeah, also it's getting sun and it was in the shade and it was acclimated to the shade. So anywhere where you cut the trees down, you're going to have an impact. Like the lamb's quarter that was under the alder that got cut more than I was expecting, it looks like crap. Yeah. And that's just because it's like, oh, there's all the sun now and I'm used to the shade. So the garden this year for me is not doing great, and it usually does great. Like even my garlic isn't awesome. Like I usually harvest it this week and I looked and it's still not ready. And I think I'll be harvesting it next week when I'm not here. So I won't be harvesting it next week when I'm not here. I have to decide if I'm taking it out next Wednesday, just because it is what it is, or if I wait. And the problem is when you wait too long with garlic, then you are using the pitchfork to get it out because the stem dies back all the way and you can't just I just pull it out. So the reason the garden is not great is twofold. One, I did start my garden a little later than usual, which is usually not a problem. And we have had so much rain that I got slugs and I didn't get them drunk. So that was a problem. So they ate some of the leafy stuff. And then there's another, I haven't identified what it is, but there is another pest up there, like getting stuff, and it's eating the leaves. So I don't know what it is because I haven't tried to figure it out. And the remedy to this is wood vinegar will keep it away, but it also keeps pollinators away, which doesn't matter right now, although it's about to matter for the squash plants. So I'm going to go up there today and do a treatment of the wood vinegar, which makes your plants basically smell like a campfire, and then it's not super palatable to the biting kind of insects. I was hoping, because I couldn't get the vinegar thing done. It's a dilute, by the way. So I couldn't get the wood vinegar spray done at a time when it wasn't just going to rain later that day or the very next day, which will deter the pests until it gets rained on and then it washes off just with the cycle of the weather. So now it looks like we have a few sunny days, so it's totally worth doing. And we'll see how that does. There is just something all over my green beans this year. Like they're just crap this year. And so I have so many seeds. I'm just once a week or once every other week putting more green beans in, because eventually that cycle will break. And so at this point, we're looking more at a more fall garden abundance. Like anything that fruits is not doing great. Everything that's a leafy green is doing great. So I have chard and heat resistant spinach and longevity spinach and all of these other greens. Actually, the Brussels sprouts from last year came back, and we'll see what they do, but they're doing okay. So it's and like the herbs are doing great. The green beans don't look good. The squash looks okay. We'll see how that goes, because usually then we end up with the squash vine borers coming in and making me sad. The cucumbers are okay, but not great. And I started those late, so they may get better. And they're under shade cloth. And then tomato wall is awesome. Like it's one of the best tomato walls I've ever had right now.
Yeah.
Too bad I don't have 2 tomato walls.
That was on my plan to work on today.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. And I'm like, hey, we moved the truck because I'm selling the Mighty Max, and I'm pretty sure it's getting picked up tomorrow.
A list of other things.
Yeah. Having coffee with me is like, and then we need to do this, and then we need to do that. And there's like Okay, but what of those things are we actually doing? Because I just listed off more things than we can do in a day. That's what it's like every day, right?
You just listed like 3 years worth of projects in 10 minutes.
I'm pretty good at that. So it's not doing great. It's not horrible. And I'm not going to stress about it because if I'm not here to manage it, then like gardens do better when you're there to take care of them, period. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Potted peppers are looking good, you said.
Yeah.
But do you have a whiteboard with the projects list to check off? No, we don't have that right now. I do want that. Actually, I think I want a chalkboard.
Okay.
But that's going to be another project. It's going to be like the project list is build the chalkboard or put the. I had a chalkboard and it got wet and it turned into a pile of sawdust.
Because it was made out of sawdust
Yeah.
and wood.
But I bought it at Aldi for like $10, so that was pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so there will be something like that, AR. He needs to see the Joel Salatin thing too, because I have a list written here and we go over that in the morning, but we don't always align. Part of the issue we have to say is like which one of these is the priority. And we do make that decision kind of every day. And then sometimes it does not get stuck to because something happens. But in general, that works pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to be careful with him about like this is a do or die item because he literally will do or die it. And then it's like 8:00 at night. And I'm like, you actually do need to stop working, even though the thing's not done. So we have to be really careful about that. Garden sprinkler was all clogged up, which is why it wasn't working well. So that got handled. And now it reaches the garden mostly. It doesn't reach the edges still. But that's better than what it was doing. And knowing that we're moving the garden, I've been really hesitant to put in my drip irrigation that I want to build for it because it's next year, the garden's not going to be there. So then I'm like, can we put that effort? Can we get the sprinklers working well enough for this year and put any extra effort into getting that garden set up for next year? I was thinking of going down to the restaurant at the marina and seeing what they do with their food scraps.
That thought has crossed my mind too.
Yeah, just to make more compost. Anyway, next segment is infrastructure. How's the tree project?
On hold.
My property has a hip camper coming in 2 weeks. And it looks like, well, it looks like crap right now because we took down all these trees and there's piles of brush everywhere. You can't get from one place to another very easily because there's stuff in the way. Is that driving you crazy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what are we doing?
It's like, hopefully tomorrow we're getting a wood chipper.
Yeah, so you can rent wood chippers that take on bigger pieces of wood. And we decided to rent a wood chipper and chip everything up we can chip up this weekend. And then there's been a wild debate about what to do with the wood chips.
That's kind of one of those things. If you want the wood chips to use for a specific project, you better start using them because if they just sit there, I'm going to start using them in places where I want them.
Yeah, I want to mount wood chips available near the chicken coop, but not in the pasture with them to be able to mix in with their food scraps. That's what I want. Yeah. Which we'll have more chips than is needed for that probably, but that works pretty well. And then I want to age the wood chips so that they are breaking down so I can use them as mulch.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I know you have stuff you want to use them for too. And the thing about making wood chips, guys, is we have like mountains of brush to chip up everywhere. And the volume of wood chips we're going to get is going to be like 3 wheelbars full or something like that.
It's going to be more than that.
It will be more than that, but it's like, it's amazing how it's like, it's going to be so many wood chips. And you're like, that's all I got.
Yeah. What you don't know is how much of the larger stuff is actually in those piles.
Yeah.
You can't see it through all the fluff.
I get it. I just know I've done wood chips before. And then we were talking because as the result of the fodder tree system being used now and feeding the goats the fodder trees, I have a bunch of fodder tree sticks that are ready to be ground up. So Nighthawk has a wood chipper. I'm going to talk to him about getting it functional and setting up a wood chip station somewhere, because all of those like branches that are left behind that they eat the leaves off of can be chipped up over time. And if we just have a set place where it is, then like once a week I can go through and chip them up, and then you start getting wood chips going from that as well. The wood chips are the thing we can use the most of, or straw around here right now.
Yeah.
So any of that sort of carbon-based stuff is super helpful. But so infrastructure-wise, the trees are down. I hate not having trees in my yard. And I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen as much as it would. But as a result of that, we are now setting plans for what kinds of trees we want to replace some of them with.
Yep.
Which may result in a fall workshop sort of thing. Class. Workshop's the wrong word.
Yeah.
A single day class on how trees are chosen for this place, how to plant the trees, how to care for the trees, that sort of thing. It does not include the install of the trees. We will probably plant one tree as a result of that class, and then spend the night and the next day actually do the work in the morning.
Yeah.
That's going to happen unless things in my personal life keep it from happening. So that's all of it. Tori says, I've debated getting a chip drop, but we'd have to hand cart it from the front of the back to the backyard, and I don't know if I want that. Yeah, I hand cart the wood chips everywhere here. I don't have a skid steer or anything, so we get them at the bottom of the hill. You see my property, and we go up the hill with them. And sometimes we can put them in the back of a truck bed and get them up the hill, but a skid steer would make that easier. But I find I need the wood chips so much that I don't mind that I have to hand manage them. Like we go to Wood Chip Mecca and we hand load and hand unload the chips just to use them. That's how much I like using those. Our next segment is our last segment. So if there's something you want to hear about, it would be a good time to think about asking that question. And that's finances. I am focusing from a financial standpoint on saving money on feed by using the fodder systems that are in place. I don't know how much of an impact that will have, but we will see. And then we don't have a lot to report on finances because our next big thing to sell is going to be the 5. We have 4 or 5 Rams. I don't actually know how many Rams we have right now. I can't remember.
I think it's 5.
Okay, so we have 5 Rams, we think. And
I couldn't get a good count.
Yeah.
I think it's 5.
This is like fun part of livestock. And some of those may be for sale. We'll see. Because I've calculated that we go through about 4 sheep a year if we're just eating the meat. Which means 1 is for sale, but I might sell more than 1 and just whatever. We'll see.
Yeah.
But that actually helps when you have meat to sell. And that's like the meat sales are way better than like the garlic sales or the egg sales or any of those other things here. And so that is what it is.
Well,
so all we're doing is not spending money at the grocery store. We're not bringing in income right now.
Yeah.
But
not spending a ton of money either.
Yeah. I have another show with Amy Dingman this in July. And one of the things I want to talk about is ways that we are not spending money at the grocery store with sort of the from scratch living standpoint.
Yeah.
As inflation hits people harder, and also ways that we are spending more money with our from scratch living choices than we would if we just bought the thing at the grocery store. Because there are 2 sides to that. And if you think that just doing everything from scratch saves you money, that's not true. I do things from scratch primarily because the nutrition is better, it tastes better, and it is better. And yeah, it insulates me from the pressure of the grocery store. So that's cool. But then other times I'm like, this cheese I made from the raw milk I bought. Like we had this mozzarella salad. So it was fresh beets that I like cooked, and then basil leaves from the garden, and then mozzarella, and then I drizzled it with some balsamic, and it was a balsamic reduction. And I also salted it because you got to add salt to something like that. And it was a really good salad. And I'm pretty sure the cheese I for sure had $8 in this ball of mozzarella. It was an $8 ball of mozzarella that you could get at the store for $4 probably.
Yeah,
so 100% spent more on that than it would have cost at the store.
Yeah, the flip side of that part is that particular salad, I wouldn't have liked the huge chunks of cheese that she put in that if they had come from the store. The homemade stuff was good.
Yeah. So that's actually a really good salad too. It's one of my favorite. That one's good with tomatoes too. And you switch out the beets for tomatoes, and it's more like a caprese, but tomatoes are not ripe yet. They're going to be, I'm super stoked. I'm pretty sure when I get back from California, the next time I'm going to have ripe tomatoes based on fruit that I'm watching.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're finally getting into fresh tomato season, which is my favorite time of year. And what I learned this year, because I accidentally cut one of the tomatoes off in one of my tomato buckets. And then I was like, dang it, that bucket's not working. And then I went over there. I was like, oh, because I cut the stem of the tomato. So now the water is not getting up the stem. So I took it out, and I had another plant that had a sucker that was about 3 feet long. And I cut that sucker, and I just stuck it in the bucket, like through I have net cups, right? So I stuck it through that so that the stem was in the bucket, like you'd put a flower in a vase, and I left town. And apparently he was looking at this tomato going, yeah, she's right. That tomato doesn't look very good. I'm going to have to mess with that bucket and how the water is feeding to it. And I came back and it looked awesome a week later. And what's happened in that week is it has grown roots and become its own tomato vine. And so then I hadn't told him I did that because it was sort of like 10 minutes before we went to the airport, I did this thing.
Yeah.
Because I was like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? So I was like, hey, that tomato's looking really good now. I guess it started growing roots, and I told him what I did, and he's like, oh, I kept looking at that thinking it looked sad. And the reason it looked sad is it didn't have any roots, and it was also 100 degrees outside, which was hard on the tomato when it didn't have roots yet. So yeah. So that worked well. And that means for the new tomato wall that will eventually get done, I'll just I have some tomatoes ready to go in it that are really big, but I'll just end up taking suckers off the existing and rooting them. And then probably that will produce fruit a little later into the season.
Yeah.
Because I find, we also have one that we need to run the trellis for further than it ran out of trellis already. And I'm way ahead of schedule for that. Usually that doesn't happen until mid-July. No. And these just they took off like wildfire this year. I don't know why. I have no signs of blight either. But the first tomato caterpillar-y thing, tomato worm, was sighted yesterday. So I need to get out there and really look at what that is. And it looks like I have a question from Tori. I keep having people ask me about my goji berries. This gives me lots of ideas for side hustles off the homestead. What's a good way not to get overwhelmed with all the ideas in my head? I can't believe Tori just asked that question. Do you have advice for Tori?
Pick one and execute on it.
Yeah. A couple of things, Tori. The My Three Things method is designed because I get into that state all the time. I literally sit there in the morning over coffee and tell them 40,000 ideas. And then we choose one or two that actually matter. And I usually will say at this point, I know I'm just spouting stuff off that we're not going to do all this stuff. But I allow myself to have what I call scatter time, where I have all the ideas. Yeah, I'm going to give you the look. But at the same time, I shut it off sort of okay, my brain may still be going off on things, but it's time for me to stop talking about it or giving energy to the fact that I have a million ideas. And so I don't know what other ideas you have, but if your goji berries are ripe right now and you can sell them, and that can actually bring money into your homestead, or if you can dry them and sell them dried, which a lot of people like dried goji berries better than the fresh ones, then I would say, okay, this Saturday I have 4 hours to deal with the goji berries, and I'm going to try this thing and see how it goes. And then if it makes you money and one of your goals is to make more money from the homestead, and that's more important than other things to you on the homestead, then you're like, okay, that's actually making money. That's my coffee, right? Like that's actually making money. I like to do it. I'm going to put more effort into the coffee. Same with the goji berries. I think it does not hurt to try multiple enterprises, but I also think it's really important to give yourself permission to try something, realize it's not working for you for whatever reason. I hate it. It's not making money. It's set up dumb and I need to reset it up, or I need to let it go because I don't have time to reset it up and this other thing is working better. I think it's about choosing something and going for it and being willing to give up, because we're taught not to give up on anything ever. And that's not true. When things are not working well for you, stop doing them. If it's not like something that's like germane to keeping you or your children alive, like do something else with that time, because just rhinocerosing through all the time on other things does not get you to a happier life. And we all want a happier life long term. So hopefully that helps you with that, guys. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. One, you can get your delicious coffee from holleroast.com. And another way you can support me is by becoming a member. We are back on the webinar train. And if you are a member, you get access to the Jill Salatin webinar as one of your webinars if you want it. And yeah, that's all over at livingfreeintennessee.com. And with that, go out, make it a great week.